Zach Wilson and Mekhi Becton will be active and ready to go this week. This week. Against the Cleveland Browns in their Hall of Fame game. This, according to head coach Robert Saleh. I'm Glenn Naughton with JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. Robert Saleh met with the press after practice. He said Zach Wilson and Mekhi Becton will be a go. This will be the first time we've seen Becton play live football snaps against another team since his injury 2 years ago against the Carolina Panthers in Week 1. Big game for Becton. You got to expect some rust. He's not going to come out and be in midseason form. I expect him to struggle. Again, any player at any position, 2 years off, especially a guy as big as Becton, even with the weight loss, still a big dude. So I do expect some hiccups, but you do hope to see him come out of it healthy. You hope to see him do a couple things that remind you of the guy he was as a rookie 2 years ago. So big day for Becton. Don't expect perfection. As far as Zach Wilson goes, this is huge for him. I know people are going to say it's preseason. Who cares? This, that, and the other. As I've said before, and look, this is my opinion. With Zach, it's mental. It's mental more than physical. So if he can go through the process, if he can get himself ready to play this game and make the throws that he needs to make, that's going to be great for his psyche. That's going to show that he's progressing mentally. If he goes out there and he looks like the guy he was before, playing the way that got him benched twice last year, then it'll be concerning. So it's a big week for Zach. The question is, how much does he play? I'd said some time ago that once Aaron Rodgers was on the radar, that if he came in, you may as well give Zach 90% of the preseason snaps. You want to give Streveler and Boyle a handful, fine, go for it. But Zach Wilson should be playing. That may be a bit high, but I would say play him 3 quarters every week, and see what he can do. See if he's coming along. Robert Saleh did say that, I believe, not today, he said yesterday, I believe, or recently, that if Aaron Rodgers and the starters played, it would be a few snaps against the Giants. So, that we'll have to wait and see. But in the meantime, I think Zach is the guy who needs to be getting the lion's share of the snaps this preseason. Some other guys, some other names to kind of be on the lookout for. Joe Tippmann, when he was drafted, Robert Saleh said there would be a competition with Connor McGovern, and it does look as if McGovern is being handed the starting job. He's been running with the ones while Tippmann is with the threes. I wouldn't worry too much about Tippmann being with the threes, or actually, I wouldn't worry about it at all. I do think he does take the starting job at some point. It's just a matter of when. Does he take it week 4? Does he take it week 5? Does he take it week 8? We'll have to wait and see. I mean, listen, I'd love for him to come out in the preseason and absolutely dominate and show that he can handle the position and win that job right out of the gate. But with the Jets having the toughest part of their schedule early on, I would imagine that McGovern, the veteran, who was brought back on a 1-year deal, I would figure him to start for the early going at least. Running back situation, Dalvin Cook was at camp today, taking in practice, talking to Woody Johnson. Aaron Rodgers had a word with him at some point. Jets clearly want this guy bad. They want Dalvin Cook. The fans were loving it. They're chanting his name out there. Dalvin Cook wants to be a Dolphin, but if they're not making him the offer he wants, he may land with the Jets. It'll give the Jets a nice backfield, or an upgrade in the backfield. However, is it one that's needed? For me personally, Breece Hall, who Saleh said will be back in a couple of weeks. Between Breece Hall and Izzy Abanikanda, Bam Knight, Michael Carter, I like those guys. Those guys are versatile. They can catch the ball out of the backfield. Bam Knight's a kick returner. So I don't know. I like the group they have, but if they want to go out and spend 6, 7, 8 million on Dalvin Cook, they're going to do it. Again, it's not that he won't be an upgrade. It's a matter of, is he a necessary upgrade and how much are you spending on him? I would hope the Jets are in the 5 or 6 million ballpark, but who knows? We'll have to wait and see what happens. Are the Dolphins going to make it a moot point and call him up and say, okay, fine, we get it. We saw you at Jets practice today. We'll give you an extra million, an extra 500,000, whatever it is he's holding out for, to get Miami to bring him in. So I'd imagine he'll be a Dolphin or a Jet, and it's all just down to what the Dolphins are willing to offer, and then go from there. Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, wouldn't expect to see them in the preseason, which is to be expected, and that's why I look at a guy like Javelin Guidry, a guy who has played the boundary and the slot. He's fighting for a roster spot, as is Bryce Hall, who you kind of feel like Hall is a nice depth piece, or can be a nice depth piece along with Brandon Eccles. Eccles leapfrogged Hall on the depth chart last year, so you would imagine if one of those guys isn't going to make it, Hall is the guy who's a bit closer to being on the chopping block. I think the for me personally, if you look at this roster, if you look at the daily camp reports, the thing that's I find interesting is that we've had almost zero news about the young linebackers on this roster. I haven't heard Claudin Charles' name mentioned. I haven't heard Malik Hall's name mentioned. I haven't heard Sage Surratt's name mentioned. None of these guys, none of these young kids they brought in. The other undrafted linebacker, Caleb Johnson out of Miami, I've not heard any of their names. Zaire Barnes had an interception sometime last week. That might be the first time I heard a linebacker's name. So I don't know if they're just not making plays or if no one's paying attention, but I'm going to be watching the linebackers awfully close Thursday against the Browns because there are some spots to be won on this defense. We know that Quincy Williams and C.J. Mosley are locked in. You figure Barnes is a draft pick, probably locked in. And then it's going to come down to, Charles, Hall, Johnson, Surratt, and see where these guys land. Hamza Nasruddin, Jamie Sherwood's a lock. He's going to make it. I expect him to play quite a bit this season. We've discussed that during the offseason. Hamza Nasruddin, nice special teamer, but I don't think his roster spot is what I would call safe at this point. He hasn't done a whole lot since being drafted. So you do have some guys who are locked in, of course, and then you've got guys who are fighting for spots. And again, a lot of them maybe they're just not doing a whole lot. But staying on that side of the ball as far as what things that are going to be important to watch this week, the safety play. I tweeted it out yesterday. If you look at the PFF grades and not even the PFF grades on their own. Look at things like the completion percentage, like how often guys are getting beat in coverage. And the Jets safeties were not good last year. Adrian Amos, who everyone figures, he's coming in, he's going to be the guy to step in against the pass. He had the worst grade out of all of them. And the Packers let him walk. He was a very high paid, highly thought of player. Do they think he's got nothing left? I mean, it would appear so. They let him go. But his numbers, at least his grades, would indicate that he has in fact lost a step. And as we said, it didn't look as if Green Bay was working all that hard to keep him on board. LaMarcus Joyner, of course, is gone. So you've got Jordan Whitehead and of course Tony Adams, who we've discussed ad nauseum this offseason. He's going to get his shot. I think we're going to end up seeing a lot of Whitehead and Adams, and maybe Amos, not as much as some people are anticipating. But the safety spot's going to be an interesting one. I don't think Ashton Davis makes this roster. I think he's gone. We're going to have the 53-man roster prediction coming out tomorrow, I believe. And spoiler alert, Ashton Davis isn't on there. So safeties and linebackers and coverage are probably the biggest concern for me personally for this team coming up this year. And again, so something I'll be watching this weekend. I think if you look at the coverage numbers for the linebackers as well, I mentioned the safeties already. You look at Quincy Williams gave up, I believe, 60 receptions on 70 targets last year. So, teams are going to, especially with Sauce and DJ Reed being what they are, if you're an opposing offense, you're going to look to pick these linebackers apart, and you're going to test these safeties early on. Travis Dye, a back I've mentioned a couple times. Looking forward to seeing him. I think he's a guy who wins a practice squad spot. Versatile guy, 5'10", 200 pounds. He can run, catch, block. He can do it all. Productive guy in college, as I've mentioned before. And Trey Dean is a safety I left out. The undrafted free agent, two undrafted free agent safeties to discuss, really. Trey Dean and Marquise Waters. Waters, the Jets have him listed as a safety, but he played a lot of linebacker in college. Having just mentioned the Jets' inability to cover at the linebacker spot, I think that makes Waters a really interesting prospect. I've said before, I think he can steal a spot on this team. But listen, the Jets have a nice issue. They've got talented players now. So it's going to be harder to get roster spots than it has in the past. There are a lot of guys on this current roster that I think would have won spots, in recent years, but they're going to have a hard time this year. But Trey Dean and Marquise Waters, two guys to keep a really close eye on in that safety room. I think that those guys have a shot to make a name for themselves. And again, I've heard Trey Dean's name once or twice throughout camp. Waters, haven't really heard him. And then the tight ends, Zach Kuntz, E.J. Jenkins. You have a late round, a day 3 pick, and an undrafted free agent, along with Kenny Yeboah, another UDFA from a couple years ago who's kind of hung around. He looks like he'll be the odd man out. He's going to have a really difficult time making this team, but he's a little bit more experienced. He's going to have a chance to show, to make some plays this preseason. And last and certainly not least, the receivers. We want to see these young dudes. Randall Cobb back, by the way, off the pup list today, so he is back in action with his buddy Aaron Rodgers. But Jason Brownlee, again, we saw his name pop up today. One of my pre-combine players to watch. He seems to be doing a really nice job, and people are penciling him in to make the roster because he just makes a play every single day. Xavier Gibson, a guy, more of a slot guy. Brownlee better suited for the slot for the boundary. Bigger, stronger guy with great hands who can make plays in a crowd, make the tough catches. Whereas Gibson's a guy, short area quickness. He's going to be able to, use his speed and quickness to get open underneath, and that's why I would love to see him blow up and outperform Randall Cobb and take that roster spot. I'm not saying it will happen. I don't think it will happen. I think Cobb's relationship with Aaron Rodgers makes him pretty safe. But I would love to see Gibson step up and make some plays. Brian Baldinger, former lineman, current analyst, said that he tweeted out the other day that while he was at Jets training camp, he thought he was watching Garrett Wilson make some plays over the middle, and it turned out it was Gibson. So he went back and watched, came away very impressive. So, last thing before we go, or last wide receiver I wanted to mention, Irv Charles, a guy from last year. Sorry, my screen just shut down on me. Irv Charles, the receiver, the undrafted free agent, started his career at Penn State. Size speed combination is phenomenal. The problem was played at a small school where there's virtually no film on him. If you're trying to find, whether you're using Caddy's cut-ups, which I recommend, or if you're using, looking for games just on YouTube for live game action, not the all 22s, there's close to nothing on Irv Charles out there. But what we do know is that if you do look at some of the stuff you'll find at Penn State, it was one play, it was a catch and run for a long touchdown. But Jesus, I mean, he was the speed, the way he was pulling away from the defenders. Nobody was gaining ground. He was just, with every yard, he was pulling away more and more. For a guy who's 6'4" with these little DBs chasing him, that was really impressive speed, breakaway speed. And we've heard his name a few times. He's a guy that Aaron Rodgers mentioned after OTAs back a few weeks ago or a couple months ago. And there have been some people at camp who have said, don't count the guy out. So we haven't seen a lot of him. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I've seen him take 100 snaps. I haven't. I've seen a very limited sample size, but based on what I have seen, based on the size-speed combo and what we're hearing from people who are at camp, he's not doing a bad job. And as we said, Aaron Rodgers had some nice words for him not long ago. So those are the groups I'm going to be looking at most closely. As I said, Saleh says it'll be all kids this week. Not the starters won't see the field, which, as I said, right thing to do. So the receivers, the safeties, the linebackers, Tippmann at center, those are the things. Those are the things I'm going to be keyed in on, focused in on. What are you going to be watching? Let us know. Comment below, and maybe it'll generate some nice conversation for after the game to see who was watching, what they saw, and what they thought. But we're only a few days away from the Jets kicking off the exhibition season, folks, and between the NFL and college, we've got football every weekend from now until the Super Bowl. So that'll do it for this one. Looking forward to the game this Thursday night. Hope you are too, and hope there's plenty of conversation to be had afterwards. Have a good one, Jets fans.